Hi, everybody. I'm Joanne Preston, and I'm going to be talking actually in two different webinars about how to publish. This is really an important part of your professional life, and this first half will be about the decisions that you have to make early when you're deciding to publish. What we're going to do is we're going to have an introduction, so I want to get to know a little bit about you. I'll talk about whether or not you should go for a book or an article, and then talk a little bit about a book and what goes into getting a book published. And then we'll briefly talk about articles. And then we'll go into, okay, here I am, I've got a dissertation and it's 300 pages long, what do I do now? And I'll talk about getting help, finding a mentor or a coach, what are the advantages of going to a conference and giving a presentation, how to submit to a conference, and then what is phase 2 like? So let's move on. First, I'm Joanne Preston. I've done a lot of publication. I have about 15 books, and I have probably 200 articles that I've published, and all of them pretty much are in peer-reviewed journals. And I'll talk a little bit about them a little later on. I've been editor of the Organization Development Journal for over 15 years. This is the most cited reference in the field of organization development internationally. So I'm very proud to be a part of this journal. Now, as far as I can see, we've got Mark. So Mark, would you say in the chat maybe where you are in your program and why you're attending this webinar, okay? And I'll wait for you to type that out. Mark, are you still there? Yes. You're first class away from your concept paper, and you haven't taken your comprehensive test. Okay, so this is actually a good time for you to be taking this webinar because it lets you know what you need to do. Okay, so let's go on and let's talk about whether it should be a book or whether it should be an article. I think the real important thing are these three questions. Which gives you more name recognition? Which is more valuable to your success? And can you make it interesting? Okay, so when you're writing a dissertation, your audience is the members of your committee, and they're academics, and you write specifically for academic people, specifically for your chair and your committee, and that's your audience. You're working on a DBA, which is great because it's an applied degree, okay? And that might mean you will more likely write it on some kind of case or some kind of applied situation which you're really going to think about writing about. Okay, so most likely, and I'm guessing, and you have to let me know, you are in a position already in a company or an industry, and you probably want to stay in that industry or company with a DBA. Is that correct? You've got an MBA in mediation and arbitration. Okay, that's great. All right, so after graduation, you will probably consult, considering your background in business and mediation and arbitration company. So you're going to be in a company, and will you continue to arbitrate with unions and continue to stay with that company after graduation? If that's the case, the name recognition is going to be high-risk negotiations consultant. Okay, so the name recognition for a consultant is basically what gets your name out, how you get your successes out. And that could be either books or it could be articles, and it really depends. Here's the thing about books. Books take a long time. Articles are faster. It depends on how quickly you want to get your name out. And what is important about that is that, you know, the more people that read your work, the more successful you're going to be as a consultant. For example, all of my career, I have been a combination of an academic and consultant. In the last, say, 7 or 8 years, I have basically been a full-time consultant. I still publish in order to get my name out and get my ideas out. I am less likely to use a book because books generally are read by very few people. You're really lucky if you write a book that is read by 100 people. You know, if you get on the New York Times bestsellers list, well, then that's really great. But chances are that's not going to happen with your book. Mostly because what you want to do is make whatever you write extremely interesting to people who are practitioners, people who are the average person, rather than people in your field. That's what makes a book or even an article be read more. Okay, so let's talk about books. How it's written is very important. It's got to be for the audience of the average person rather than a committee. So your dissertation is very different writing than a book would be. What you're trying to do is attract more people to read what you have to say, which means you've got to translate the book information into something that is going to be interesting to the average person that might be in your field, whether they are managers, whether they are union people, whoever they are. You want to attract them to read it. So your writing is very different. Okay. I'm very good at taking companies over, either own them or compete against them. Okay, so you're in the business of buying and selling companies. So you're going to end up owning your own business pretty much. And 3 times successful. Already you've owned your own business. So what would writing, whether it's a book or an article, be for you? Tell me what your audience would be if you were going to write. So while Mark is answering that question, I'm going to go on. So we know that the writing is different, and you have to decide whether or not you're going to publish this book yourself or try to get a publisher interested in it. To attract a publisher, you're going to write a proposal, and then you're going to contact different publishers. Now, the more you are known in your field, the easier it is to get a publisher interested in your work. Many people, for their first book, go with, let's say, their chair, if their chair is already well known in the field. And so they do a combination of their name being first as the owner of the dissertation and their chair, or the famous person, being second author, in order to attract a publisher. Even if you do attract a publisher, they are helpful to a certain extent. They will help you edit the book. They will help you write it to attract the market that you want to attract. But more and more publishers are not marketing the book. They are asking the writers of the book to set up the marketing plan and how to actually market this. So the other option for a book is self-publishing. Realistically, I would be a consultant to negotiate, fix, or clean up a contractor company that is in a bad situation. Okay, and that's fine as a consultant. So you would use your writing to actually market your business, I would assume. Okay. So I will keep that in mind as I give examples. Okay, so if you're going to publish a book yourself, then you've got to clean up the writing, and you have to make sure that you have written it for the audience that you want. And you can approach Amazon, which is a great place to self-publish. Amazon, again, won't market your book. They will publish your book, but it will be up to you to actually market it. So, okay, you do not make a lot of friends in this kind of business. Yeah, I get that. When you are telling a company that they are not doing well and most likely will have to be sold or taken over by you, yeah, I get that. By the way, I've been a consultant for many years, and I give companies bad news all the time. It's kind of the way you do it, and what the result of the bad news might be for the company, whether or not you are making friends or whether you're making people who understand the situation. So I get that. Again, I'm not really sure, beyond being a consultant and marketing your skills and your successes and the way that you take over companies and make them whatever you want to make them and make them successful for you is probably what you're going to write about. And chances are that's more of an article than a book. Okay, so marketing, whether you self-publish or go to a publisher, is up to you, and you have to know enough about your audience to make a good marketing plan for a book. Okay, what about chapters in books? That's good too. You want to make sure that, again, the book is really something that people are going to read. For example, a chapter that I just had published recently is in a book series called The Great Thinkers of Organization Development and Change. Now, those books, because they are picking historically famous people in the field and up-and-coming people in the field, those books are going to be read. So having a chapter in those two books is going to be very, very important because most people in the field are going to read it. But if you choose to have a chapter in a book that happens to be a colleague of yours or somebody that is not real well known, chances are very few people will be reading that chapter. So you have to pick and choose the book chapters carefully that you are going to contribute to. Okay, what about articles? Well, articles are faster. You can get an article published in 1 or 2 years, depending on the journal. They are read by thousands of people rather than 100 people. And they are ways to get your name out faster. You can choose journals that are academic. You can choose journals that are practitioner-oriented. You can choose journals that are a combination of practitioner and academic, depending on how you want to build your name. So in the case of Mark, chances are he's going to want to go to practitioner-oriented journals to get his name out faster, so that he can build a reputation as a good consultant in the field, whether it's arbitration or whether it's helping companies that are failing. You have to, when you do an article, really think about who's first author. First author is the person who writes the rough draft, who generally takes control of the article. The second and third authors generally add to, help revise, help rewrite, but the main effort is upon the first author. So if it's your dissertation, you should be first author, even though you have committee members that helped you in this. You wrote the first draft, you wrote all the revisions, and when it comes to the actual article that you produce from that, then you are the one that is really controlled that particular article. One question about articles is whether or not you ought to website publish it or send it out for review. If you actually put it on your own website, the full article that you are writing, then it is considered published, and you cannot take it to any other journal. So do not put an article on your personal website or anybody else's website if you are planning to send it to a journal. I would strongly suggest getting your dissertation out as quickly as possible, whether it is in book form, whether it is in article form, because what you are trying to do is that idea, that original idea that you wrote about, you want the world to know that it is yours. And so getting it out with your name as first author is extremely important. Okay. So, now, you've got 300 pages and it's your dissertation. And so how do you make it so that it is either good for a book or good for an article? Well, as I said before, the writing is different. You start with the audience. Who is the audience that you want to sell this book or this article to? And you write for that audience. You make it practical, even if it is an academic journal. What do I mean by that? Well, you want to write in English, not jargon. I know that in your days as a student, doctoral student, master's student, whatever you are, the people in your life said, know the field, know the jargon, and use it. But when you are writing for publication, you want to use jargon very rarely. And if you do, you absolutely want to explain what that jargon means. Because the average person who might read your book or article may not be familiar with that term because it's very specific to your field. So write in English. Also, in order to make it practical, I know that a lot of people put quotes from journal articles in their dissertation a lot of times. And I'm going to suggest that when you're writing for publication, that you use a quote rarely. And my motto is one quote for every 30 pages. Now, you might find that hard to understand, but quotes really disrupt the flow rather than help the flow of the article or the book. Because to read an indented paragraph-long quote is really boring. It is much better if you rewrite that quote and interpret it for the reader and then cite the person who said the idea. That keeps the flow of the article going. So make sure that you are very, very careful about quotes. Now, quotes work real nicely at the beginning of a chapter and can set up the theme of a chapter. So, you know, that is useful, but quotes within the body of a chapter or in the section of an article, keep that very, very few. Make sure that you have flow within your sections and within the entire book or within the entire article that you are writing. So in other words, you want to tell the audience what you're going to talk about. You want to then talk about it in that order, and then you want to summarize. So it is really important to have flow throughout sections and flow throughout the entire piece that you are writing. In order to get 300 pages down to an article or even a usable book, you've got to have a theme. So you've got to find the theme that is important in your dissertation or in your master's thesis or in your idea. What is the most important thing that you want to get across to your audience? Okay, so how do you find help? Well, you can use a coach or a mentor. A mentor could be the chair of your dissertation or thesis committee. It could be one of the people within your committee that helped you write that. It could be someone that you actually hire. Another way of finding the theme is to present it to others, and you can do that in a number of ways. So let's look at the mentor. Your chair is a natural mentor. He or she is the one that has helped you through writing this piece of work, whether it was a case study, whether it was some kind of analysis of the literature in the field. Whatever your product was, the chair of your committee is a natural for helping you find the theme that you need and helping you get in the direction of the publication. A committee member who is also well published is another person that you can ask to help you. You might be surprised to know that you can actually approach somebody in the field who is well known, and they may be willing to help you, especially if your work helps complete their work or is an addition to their work that makes their work more meaningful. So don't be hesitant to approach somebody that you actually used as a reference, especially if you verify their findings. They may be very willing to help you find the theme and get it published. Another approach that you can use to find a mentor or a coach is Doctoral Net. They've got lots of wonderful chairs. Also, in terms of writing, you need to relook at the Doctoral Net site in order to get the kind of help you need to make your writing practical and useful. Okay, they may be PhD. The comment was that committees are generally academics in this particular school. They're PhD in the business area and have no practical business experience. That may be true. And if it is true, then they are not going to be the ones to help you write what you want to write. So then you either look to someone else in the field or you go to Doctoral Net, because what you want, particularly for your success in consulting, is somebody who can write practically, who can write clearly, who can write in English and not in jargon. So, yeah, you need to look for someone in the field or approach Doctoral Net. Yeah, well, the research is going to be very, very good. Your committee is going to make sure that you have an outstanding project at the end of your DBA, and that is fine. Most projects have 2 or 3 articles in them if it's an article. If it's a book, you're going to try and find the theme that makes sense to write about for the book. So, yeah, you're going to have really well thought out research to support whatever you write from the field, from the school that you are graduating from. Okay, so how can you find a theme by presenting to others? Well, in some schools, and it depends on the school you go to, they have doctoral student consortiums, and you can either present your dissertation results in a webinar or face-to-face with other students in lots of different ways. And what I strongly advise is if you present it to other students, then tape that presentation so that you can listen to it later. Most of us speak clearer than we actually sit down and write. And so you can get part of your draft, for first draft, from a presentation that you actually give orally. Okay, the comment here is that you write in legalese. Well, okay, but that's jargon. And they're going to want you to write in business, which is another jargon. So you're going to have to learn to write for your committee. So you'll have to translate your legalese into business language. And what I'm saying to you is for a publication, you got to take the legalese out, you got to take the business out, and you got to make it English so it is practical and usable and understandable. And to be honest with you, many of my publications are in highly academic journals, but I get feedback from other authors that I really have easy to read articles. And the why? It's because I write in English, I explain my jargon, and I make it interesting. Regardless, I make it so the audience is willing to read it. Okay, so another way you can present is in Doctoral Net. Some of us who are in coaches for Doctoral Net will allow you to do a webinar and present your dissertation or case or whatever you're doing to us and to other students, and you'd get feedback on it. Another way is to present it at a conference in your field. And let's talk about conferences. You can do a paper session. You can do a symposia session. You can do a poster session. Okay, a paper session is generally individual, and you do it by yourself, and you apply to the conference by yourself as an individual and write a short abstract, depending on what the conference is, about what you're going to talk about in your paper. In a symposia, they put it together based on the topic. And so you might have your chair who's doing research in that area and yourself, and you do a symposia together where your chair presents some of the information and you present your version based on what you discovered in the same topic area. That means that you're going to have several people being involved in the production of the proposal for the conference. And in a poster session, many conferences have that specifically for doctoral students and master's students. And what that is you do a poster either on flip chart paper or tag paper or something, where you put introduction, methodology, results, and major discussion points all on that one piece of large paper, and you stand in front of it in a big room along with other people, and as people come up to look at your poster, you explain what you have written. It is a great way to get feedback on your project in order to help you get focused on the theme and what is important to write on for either book or for articles. And the reason why, especially a paper session, it gives you individual feedback on your idea. Poster sessions also give you individual feedback on your idea. Symposia generally don't give as much impact on your idea as to the overall idea of the theme of the symposia. Okay, now what kind of conference can you go to? You can go to local ones that are citywide. You can go to regional ones that are within a few states. You can go to national ones that are for the United States or for your country, if you are in another country. And you can go to international conferences. As the conferences get larger, the competition gets more intense. so that local conferences and regional conferences are easier to get into to be a speaker, especially if you are a new graduate or you are a graduate student. When you get to the national level and international level, the competition is far greater. So it's harder to get your paper accepted. And that's why it might be helpful to do a symposia with your chair or your mentor in the field. Okay, so how can you get your article accepted? Well, again, it's kind of Johnny One Note. Study your audience. Know who goes to this conference, whether it is local, regional, national, or international. Who are these people? What are they interested in? Why would they be interested in hearing about what you're talking about? And write for that audience, even in your proposal. Your proposal probably is limited to 300 words or some type of limitation. So make sure that you write for your audience in that brief summary. Follow the instructions. It is extremely important. If they say 300 words, then do it in 300 words. Don't do it in 500. Don't do it in 100. Do it in about 300 words. If they say it's due on the 1st of April, I am strongly recommending that you submit your proposal a few days earlier than the last date. Depending on the number of people that are going to have to submit, if you have to do it online, there could be problems with the server because a lot of people are submitting at the same time. I recently was the chair of division at the Academy of Management, and the Academy of Management has 10 to 15,000 people who go to this conference. And I would say that most of the people actually submit their papers in the last 2 days, and 90% of them submit their proposal on the very last day, and the computer crashes. So I strongly encourage people to actually do it early, follow the instructions. Tell a story in your abstract or your proposal. Be selective. Don't say everything you can say. Make one point in it. Because when you actually get to the presentation, chances are you're going to have 20 minutes to give your entire presentation. So you're not going to be able to give your entire case study, your entire dissertation or master's thesis in 20 minutes. So give only a small part of it. And remember, rejection is an opportunity, because when you get rejected, you will get feedback from the reviewers. And that's really, really important, because that feedback will help you focus more on how to make this a better presentation and a better paper. Okay, now let me open it up to questions. Are there any questions that you have at this point in terms of the early decisions? And I will look at the chat to see if there's anything that would be helpful. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So let me go over what we're going to do in the next phase of this, this presentation. We're going to look at specifically how to write an article. And so it'll be about finding the theme of what you're going to write about for an article. Choosing a journal. What type of article makes sense for this particular journal? How do you go about writing the first draft? What is the submission process like, especially in a peer-reviewed journal? What is the peer review process like, and what kind of feedback will you be getting? And we'll talk about how you can get support throughout this entire process. And keep in mind, since I am an editor of a journal, I would say, for example, the Journal of Organization Development Journal has an acceptance rate of 10%. So out of all of the articles submitted to us, 10% of them actually get accepted and published, which means that 90% of them get some form of rejection letter. And rejection then can be useful because if the rejection is leaning positively, you can rewrite it and resubmit it to that journal based on what the reviewers said and the editor said back to you in that rejection. So not all rejections are forget it, you're never going to get it published. It may be you're not going to get it published in this particular journal because it doesn't fit. Or it may be, well, listen, you might have to reanalyze part of it. But whatever, that rejection will give you more information about how to approach either that journal again or another journal. So that's what we're going to be talking about in the next phase. So here is some things that Doctoral Net will be doing in the next few months. You can see other possible webinars that you might want to attend. I certainly appreciate the attendance at this webinar, whether you have attended live or if you are having this as a presentation that you are listening to later. Please come next Tuesday, the 28th, and we will talk more about articles. I want to thank you again, and hopefully you will have found this very, very helpful, and I have enjoyed presenting this. Thank you.